We are now in chapter 3 of Desjardins' Introduction to Business Ethics, and the topic of this chapter is indeed social responsibility. Um, so we will cover in this first aspect of that chapter social responsibility and 5 models of it. Well, we're actually not going to have time to cover 5 models in this first aspect of the chapter. We're only going to cover one, the standard economic model of social responsibility. And as you can tell, the question to watch out for is primacy of the shareholder valid? In other words, should shareholders take priority over everyone else in the decision making of a firm? The example of the standard economic model of social responsibility will be Walmart. And then we're going to look at the utilitarian argument for the standard economic model. And we're going to look at the Kantian argument for the standard economic model, that it is, in fact, a model of social responsibility. So for our purposes, a model is socially responsible if it passes either the Kantian or the utilitarian test, or preferably both. So we will be applying the ethical theories we have learned previously to these models of social responsibility in order to assess whether they actually are models of social responsibility or not. And we will use moral theories for that. All right, let's go into the content. Social responsibility is a widely used term in the public discourse, designated to communicate to the public that a firm operates morally or ethically. Let us make systematic sense of the various models of social responsibility. We will look at 5 models in our effort to think about what it means for a business to operate morally or ethically. We will employ utilitarian and Kantian analysis in order to make sense of the social responsibility models, in order to assess which of these models make the most sense and which make the least sense, and for what reasons. The moral issue of contention between these 5 models is this one. Should a firm only maximize profits and thus commit to the primacy of the shareholder interests? Or should the firm treat the interests of other affected and involved parties as equally important as that of the shareholder? And should the firm do much more than just maximize profits? In other words, take care of the well-being of these other involved and affected parties, whom we will soon call stakeholders, but that is soon to come, not just yet. All right, so the first model of social responsibility that we will examine is the standard economic model. Standard economic model, which I will abbreviate as SEM, standard economic model claims that the only social responsibility of business is to not break laws and conventions while the firm maximizes profits, right? So the firm should really not be concerned with anything other than maximizing profits, other than it should not break laws or conventions. The real thought here is that a firm should only focus on maximizing profits and should not try to do what is moral on its own initiative. Presumably, what is moral could come down to limit the actions of the firm in the shape of the laws of the land, but the firm on its own should not be concerned with acting morally at all. The underlying idea is that a firm can bring the most good to society by maximizing profits, and that any attempt to act morally by the firm will take away from the good that the firm can bring through maximizing profits, or even cause harm After all, executives are not moral experts, and they might, you know, botch things up if they attempt to act morally. They do know how to maximize profits, and that's what they should do. Furthermore, the argument is that the owners of the firm, whose wishes should be respected, would want the firm to maximize profits and not do anything that would decrease those profits, right? So on the one hand, the CEOs are no moral experts to try to act morally. And on the other hand, the owners of the firm would want the firm to do nothing other than maximize profits. That's why they're in the business, after all, right? According to the standard economic model. We'll hear other views when we examine other models, but that is the view of the standard economic model. Let us look at the Walmart example to demonstrate how the standard economic model works. Walmart is a good example of the standard economic model. Walmart operates in order to maximize profits. It maximizes revenue by selling a large number and variety of goods at low prices. And it minimizes costs by paying in wages to its employees as little as possible and by paying prices to its suppliers as low as possible. Let us first examine the utilitarian argument for that, in fact, the standard economic model is a valid social responsibility model. Right. So firms operating on the standard economic model maximize profits to shareholders and maximize benefits to consumers, as in the case of Walmart. Let's remember that Walmart delivers inexpensive goods in large variety and quantity to its consumers and thus makes many people happy, right? And that's what we recall utilitarianism to be, that a moral action is the one that makes the greatest number of persons happy. All right. So firms operating on the standard economic model maximize profits to shareholders and maximize benefits to consumers, as in the case of Walmart. But such firms, and especially Walmart, harm employees and suppliers by compensating them as little as possible. However, the number of consumers and shareholders outweighs the number of employees and suppliers. Thus, utilitarian defense of the standard economic model argues that the benefits far outweigh the harms and that there is no alternative way to deliver comparatively great benefits with smaller harms, right? So standard economic model in the case of Walmart makes good utilitarian sense. It produces much more benefits than it does harms. Let us now look at the Kantian argument for the standard economic model and Walmart as socially responsible. Kantians argue that firms, or rather corporations, and the property of are the property of shareholders, and that therefore their interests, maximization of profits, are primary. Right. So the firms should just do what is in the interest of the owners of the firm. After all, they own the firms. To do anything other than to maximize profits would be to violate the autonomy of shareholders. Right. Everyone recognizes this as the Kantian argument, where the moral action is the one that respects autonomy of all persons. Walmart is as good of an example here as any other firm. Now, in some sense, you might say, but shouldn't the autonomy of other folks also be respected? Well, given that Walmart is the property of shareholders, then the thought is that autonomy of shareholders should take priority. I mean, no one else is forced to participate in Walmart, right? If one does not like what's happening in Walmart, then simply don't buy their products or don't go to work there, right? So it seems like autonomy of owners should take priority. Thus, Walmart and the standard economic model make good utilitarian sense and make good Kantian sense, and therefore the standard economic model is a pretty good candidate for a social responsibility model. Okay, we will look at the criticisms next.